Hey everybody, it's Book of Katherine, and we are back for part 2 of who knows what. I'm filming on November 7th of 2020, and I think that's a pretty big deal that it's 2020 and I've made it this far, right? So it's November 7th, 2020, and we are part 2 of all my research that we have found regarding Beirut and Philadelphia and Revelations 15 and the bowls and Revelations 19 and the gathering of all the armies, which I believe is Philadelphia right now from looks and signs of it. So the long story short, for those of you, if you're following me on Twitter, to get to the very end, just shortcut it. If you are wondering, I am out there in the middle of the world and wondering what's going on with the election, I'm just like, shortcut, boom. I think it's the angels, the war of the angels in the world. When it talks about Revelations 19, it says that there's a war going on, and that it says there'll be the God of the angel armies. It'll finally meet the war of all the enemies, and there will be that war going on. And so I've told everybody, just, this is the time, since we're learning how to pray. It's not any kind of prayer that, since we're reading the kind of texts, I'm like, not anything I learned. I mean, I'm having to do this whole kind of new thing because I don't recognize, anyway, I guess that's the end thing. So we'll get to that. But certainly not anything. I'm very new to it, since it's not the stuff I grew up with, Catholic stuff, and it's not the stuff I saw people do in college. That's for dang sure. And the stuff that's coming into my feed, I'm like, okay, no, like none of that's relating to the ancient text or whatever. So, but that's what it seems to be saying in the text, is that it actually says, don't worry about the fight. The fight's already been won. That's already what's going to happen. And I would just say, you already know how it's going to turn out. We already know who's going to win. We've been watching all these fights all over the world. We've even predicted like how something would turn out. So pretty much like, don't worry, this has come to our shores, and I guess we know what's going to happen. In my opinion, that's what it looks like. And I think that because of what we're going to see today, what you're going to see as far as all the research I've done today. So here, let's go ahead and get started. So we have done Revelations 15 and the sort of plagues that have come so far. So here's what's very, very interesting that we've learned and the plagues in Revelations 15. Now, you would think that all the plagues are already here. They've already happened because Babylon already fell. Babylon came, it fell, it happened. Now, why wouldn't it already happened, all the plagues? Well, it turns out that the plagues have happened all over history. Some of them in the 70s, some of them in the 80s. It didn't go like like I said in part 1, it didn't go like the seals or the trumpets in this nice methodical order of boom, boom, one after another, after another, after another. That's not what's happening with these plagues or these cups. They're actually happening all over history. And it's definitely happening the most in the 7th cup because, in my opinion, it's been split. The first part is COVID, where the cup is poured out into the air around the globe. And the second part happens all the way in the beginning at the very end of the last seal that's broken in 1945 when the nations, when the, the atom bomb happens. So all the way back then, the great city, Jerusalem, actually is split into 3 parts. If you look into it, Jerusalem is still, to this day, I believe, is split into 3 parts. There's like a there's the United Nations, and then there's the United Nations, or I think that it was finally healed, but it took a long time, or like 30 years or something like that. But the great city was split into 3 parts, and it was the United Nations, and it was Palestine, and then it was Israel. So the great city, Jerusalem, was actually split into 3 parts. Very, very interesting. So it turns out that more than anything, the very final one was split across time. And I find that amazing because right before it says, you won't know the day or the hour. And it's like emphasizing that doubly over by having the next thing that happens, that's the last bowl, happen on dramatically different times, dramatically different time periods. Like, it's like almost emphasizing you're really not going to know the time. You're really not going to, you have to be ready at all times, which again emphasizes the fact that I think that there is going to be two, like, I think, like, my friends and I came up with the idea. We think that there's already been what people call a rapture. I think every time, like, my friends are like, no, my friends don't agree with me on this one. But I feel like COVID, that there was, like, people disappeared on COVID. You go into London, you go into DC, and people are gone, and people are like, well, that's when the shutdown happened. But I'm like, I'm just listening, and people, it's really hard to shut people down that much. It's really hard to just disappear people that much. People don't listen to the rules that much. Maybe I'm wrong. I saw some people that went ahead and, like, they left from Texas and they went to their land. They said they went to their ghost town. It wasn't a ghost town. It was actually like a really nice, they bought like shops and stuff up in the hills. They obviously didn't know how to live in mountain living or whatever, but it was a really nice, they're like, oh, it's a really rugged drive. And I was like, no, that's actually a new drive. I've been to ghost towns. That's not a ghost town. But they left. They went like 3 states away or something like that. And so if that's what people are doing, maybe that's what's happening. Like, everyone's going, they think they can flee this disease or something. And I'm like, it's a global pandemic. You can't go 5 states over and flee the disease. So I know our state for sure has gotten an influx, at least our area. We're like suddenly like, wow, we've suddenly gotten bigger. Even though, I don't know, it's just weird. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on from that. What I was going to say is earthquakes and Philadelphia, to get onto there. Found something very, very fascinating, very, very interesting, and very, very huge in my opinion. So everyone seems to get all the first plagues right. They all get to see, it's very obvious what they are. It's like, everything in the sea will die. Well, everything's washing up on shore, dead. And that very well could be because of all the plastic that's in the ocean. For whatever reason, dolphins are dying and washing up on shore. And they're like at 3 times the normal rate. And I was like, what rate are they normally washing up on shore on? Like, you weren't telling us about. Anyway, so, which I was like, well, that means the previous thing, the previous trumpet that said that it would kill off 1/3 of the earth was actually happening and we weren't hearing about it. But anyway, so what I was going to say was, hold on a minute. So let me go ahead and read it to you. Now, this is not the message. I need to buy more editions of the message, because boy, that has changed. I've read chapter 1 in Revelations with the message, and I was like, wow, wish we had just started with that. Like, it would have made a lot of things we did. I wasted a lot of hours researching. A lot easier if I just read that translation in the beginning. Really wish someone had told me, but oh well, I found it finally, and I was like, oh, look, everything. And my friends were like, I thought we already knew that. And I was like, no, at least I didn't know. I had to work really hard to find that out. So anyway, so here is the 7th bowl of wrath, right? So the 7th angel poured out his bowl upon the air. So to me, that's COVID, into the air. And a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne saying, now that sounds interesting, from the temple, from the throne. What does that mean? That sounds confusing when it says a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne. But very important to realize when it keeps saying from the temple, from the throne. Well, you have to realize that John's being very, very specific about Jesus being the temple. That's why everyone says, oh, a 3rd temple's supposed to be built. A 3rd temple's supposed to be built. And I'm like, oh, no. According to the text, Jesus of Nazareth keeps saying, tear down this temple and I will raise it up again in 3 days. And that's what's one of the reasons he got killed, is because he was saying his body was a temple of God. That's one of the reasons the guy got killed in the first place, was that he was saying his body was a temple. And so John was one of the people who was very, very, very big about being very specific about the wording of addressing Jesus of Nazareth with the correct terminology, if that makes sense. Like, John always says, like, he was one of the most beloved. Like, Mary and his brothers, he left outside. Jesus didn't, like, Mary and his brothers would wait outside and say, come meet us outside, Jesus. And he'd say, come inside. because they didn't want to acknowledge that he was the Son of God. They didn't want to acknowledge that he was this, that he was, and he's like, if you're one of my followers, come on in. But they were so scared that he was going to die that you could see he was running towards death. So it was very, very interesting. And so it's kind of funny that they do big temples to her, because in the text 3 times, he rebukes Mary. That's very, very fascinating. And you can understand her point of view, but it's not like he's like praising her throughout, if you really pay attention. So anyway, he's the temple. So all throughout this entire text, John is calling Jesus the temple. The temple, the temple, the temple. In some translations, like the Message, the temple is capitalized, capital T. But when it says, a voice came from the temple sitting on the throne. Yes, if Jesus of Nazareth is sitting on the throne, he said his body is a temple, then it makes sense. So maybe that'll help you a little bit when you're reading Revelations and it says the temple keeps saying things. It's not like, Solomon's temple out there. It's just Jesus. It says the book of Revelations. And so it has Jesus talking all through it, but it keeps saying the temple. That's who it is. Jesus and the temple are interchangeably. And I think that's why they keep running home. It may be possible of like, if the prophets are so big, they may know that people will be running scams to raise money of like, oh, a third temple will be raised. A third temple will be raised. And they're like, nope, like this is the temple. The temple's right here in Revelations. It's already happened. So that may be possibly why they did this. So it says, and a loud voice came out of the temple, Jesus of Nazareth, from the throne, saying, it is done. I find that interesting, saying it is done after, in my opinion, COVID is released. That's it. Whatever is released into the air is now done. So whatever is released into the air does everything. So what could be released into the air that will do everything we're about to hear? And there were great flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder. And there was such a great earthquake as there had not been since man came upon the earth. And so great an earthquake was it, and so mighty. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Babylon the Great was remembered. Now, remember I said the great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And I think that happened back in 45. Could be wrong. I may change my mind later, but think that happened. And then it says, Babylon the Great was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce wrath. What would happen in the air that could cause an earthquake? And Babylon is supposed to be this thing of trade, this big thing of what we've learned of Beirut. Beirut was this massive port, and Mary is over the ports of all these places. That's what we've learned. Rome is the big city doing all of this trading. Buying and selling is what's made Satan fall. We've learned buying and selling, gold and trading and everything is the thing that made Satan fall, the thing that like is talked down the most. Remember, what is it? Money is the root of all evil, the whole on and on. So Babylon the Great, money, trading, not the buying and selling. That's the best way I can say it. What they say, buying and selling is the phrase I hear all the time. So I think it's interesting that that's eventually when it came to the Antichrist came up. They kept looking for ways to destroy America for like 75 years or whatever. And then finally, when the Antichrist came, what did they do? They used buying and selling. They offered Americans like, here, go ahead and use your money. Do the railroad scheme. And then they'd crash the market. And then all the Americans lost their money. And then the next 10 years, they did another scheme and they did buying and selling. And then they crashed the market. And the royals would keep scooping up the money because they own the banks, scooping up the money. And that's how they eventually brought America to its heel, was buying and selling and buying and selling. And then they'd start a world war with it and then kill all those men. Very interesting to me. So it says there such an earthquake as there had not been since man came upon the earth. The great city was split into 3 parts and the cities of the nations fell. Now, how could the cities of the nations fall during an earthquake? How could all the cities of the nations fall in an earthquake? Earthquakes happen in a piece of land. How could one earthquake cause all the cities of the nation of the world to fall? It said it came into the air and all the cities of the earth would fall in this one earthquake. Well, we know already that it's all on different continents. Unless it's COVID and it causes everyone to stop working and it's a market crash. That's an earthquake. So I think of a stock market crash. We call it a crash. And what happened was I noticed DC got boarded up, Rome got boarded up, London got boarded up. London got boarded up bad, like really, really bad. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And huge hailstones, about 100 pounds each, came down from heaven upon men. And men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, because this plague was extremely severe. That I still have no idea. Like, I have no idea what's going on. Part of it, we have no idea what the heck is going on out there. We've seen horrible things happening to people. Horrible, horrible things. Huge earthquakes, all sorts of things. But here's what I do want to point out. This is very, very interesting. This is going to be so fascinating. And Philadelphia and the whole 9 yards. Wait till you see this. So, we've been wanting to know what the beast is. Which is the beast? Who is the beast? You know, the beast, the woman rides, all these sorts of things. We wanted confirmation. Well, what's very, very interesting is that this 7th seal talks about an earthquake so big that the whole earth will feel it. It really emphasizes everything by earthquake. If you look up imagery online for the 7th plague of wrath, what they do is they show imagery of all these buildings crashed under an earthquake. They show building after building crashed under an earthquake, right? And what I think of when I read it is crash by trade. But it does make you go, okay, earthquakes, what's going on with earthquakes? So I started studying earthquakes. Part of the reason I was studying earthquakes is because of the Beirut earthquake and because of a second earthquake that happened. Oh, wait till you hear about that one. So if you were paying attention, I believe it was on October 27th, or something like that. Exactly. Remember when there was like 600 miles away? Remember how I said the Beirut earthquake? Beirut earthquake happened and it had a 600-mile ring and it went as far as Turkey, but like not all the way to Istanbul, almost to Istanbul. It turned out that ring went to Ephesus, the city of Ephesus. It turned out that was the temple of Artemis, who is dun-dun-dun-dun, Ashtaroth, dun-dun-dun-dun, Asherah, the woman who sits above Beirut. Same woman, that's her temple. The earthquake actually went as far as her temple. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And when I was studying that, the second earthquake was a 7.0. It was right at that very fault line. It was a 7.0. And it turns out that temple was right. It's there's so much. Anyway, so when I was studying earthquakes, guess what I found when I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. I was studying earthquakes. I found this. This, you might think it's crazy, but I found this and I thought you would find it interesting. So, let me see if I can turn this off and see if this helps. Okay, do you guys see this right here? This is earthquake activity in the world. And I find this fascinating. If you study anything about earthquakes and seismic activity, you know all the earthquake activity is supposed to be on the rims here. You know, it's all supposed to be around the rims. But in reality, the strongest earthquake activity is happening right here. This is Turkey. And this is Iran, also known as, oh my God, Babylon. I'm not even freaking kidding. Babylon. This freaking thing that looks like a dragon, that's the dragon's head. And that's the dragon's body. And boom, if that ain't freaking wings right there. And that ain't a freaking tail. Lovely little tail. That is freaking China. Well, isn't that interesting? And I mean, we are talking right down. It is so much dragon's head that it has an eye right there. That's an actual, like, it's an actual lake, so it can't go away. So it has a little lake for an eye. It has a mouth. And if you want to get into it, like, it has an actual, like, it's got a line that runs right here. If you can see that line that runs right here. And it goes down to Israel. So it looks like a neck loop. So it looks like it's wearing a chain that's being chained by Israel. So let me get into this thing. Where do you see this? And the whole thing, its entire heart and chest, its entire breath is in Iran. Its entire breath is controlled by Babylon. And when you get into it even deeper, let me get into this, hold on. Boom, it turns out that even the topography matches it. Do you see that? The topography is like dragon all the way. Is that not crazy? See that? The head is Greece, or sorry, that's Turkey, ancient Greece right there. Right there. And so this would be Lebanon down here and Israel. And it has a quake line that goes right up here, rings around that, and then it goes right on down here through Iran, Cyprus. This is all around, also known as Persia, baby. Also known as Persia. And those are the wings. And what is this back here? Why? What is that? That looks like the Black Gate, doesn't it? Looks like the frickin' Black Gate straight out. I swear to God, this exists. This is the frickin' Black Gate from frickin' Lord of the Rings. I'm not even kidding. And where is this? This is the Himalayas. Himalayas in India. Yeah, Nepal. Which Nepal is the highest ranking in all the British, in all the realms of kings and kingdoms. Nepal is the top. Oh, the stuff I found. Hold on. Now, if you remember, there are two beasts, and they really stick out to me here. So there's one beast here, right? One right there. And it comes all the way down here with its wings out there. But if you look here, I'm always seeing this beast over here, right? Now, it may be that this is its head, and those are its wings. I can't really decide. It could be like these are his heads and that's his wing, but I think this is the beast's heads. It's always looking like that to me because Spain spewed out with its mouth all of Latin America, all the conquistadors that chained everyone. They chained more slaves than ever, I think. Maybe Lebanon did more with the African slaves. Maybe Britain and Lebanon did more with the African slaves, but Spain and their lovely partners here in Rome did all of Latin America and all of California, Washington, all of the western side of the United States, which is why, you know, what's his name was saying, Lincoln was saying it would be so hard for the United States to continue as a whole nation. So if you look at the map, I'm always seeing this. I always see a dragon here and a dragon here. Could be two beasts, but I always see them now, and they always look like two whole giants to me, and the way that they operate. And if you look clearly, this one definitely has, this one almost looks like that's the spike that it wears with 10 kings. Does that make sense? Anyway, so it could be different. I know I'm on to something there, but I'm just, you know, that's percolating in the back of my mind. If that makes sense. Let's see. Here's what's really important about that. So when you see this and you see how this works, it's not surprising in at all that Japan is horrific with the crimes they've committed throughout humanity, right? Or Korea. But it's interesting when you come in here and look at America. Over here, the conquistadors, we're not surprised, or California, and all the crimes they've committed against humanity, all along the West Coast, all the socialism they've done, and going into Mexico and the horrible drug trades down here, everything that we've known, right? And then you get into here, and you're like, well, what's going on in here? Because you're starting to learn that, you know, these earthquakes are telling us something. And then I realized, you know what? I think I remember this. And I was like, yeah, let me go look it up. I was like, that looks really familiar, that area. Because I told you, my husband and I have traveled a great deal of places. We've been very fortunate to be able to do a lot of work in a lot of places. But I was trying to check up on seismic activity. It's very, very hard to find it because there is none, right? So I finally found it, breaking it down where it is in America. And I finally found it. This is over by Memphis, Tennessee, running up the Mississippi River. I'd like to know what's going on. The last time I checked, BASF had some stuff up there. Also, Memphis is well, it really looks more like it's right along the river. This follows the river. But anyway, this is the worst of the earthquakes. And guess where this is? Does anyone know? Does anyone know what's going on in South Carolina right there? Does anyone know that right there? Because that really is like right there on the seismic map. Where is it? Boo, boo, boo. Look in here. Oh, All right, I'm going to get all... I'm going to lose it all. Anyway, here we go. South Carolina, right here, since it's the only city on the map. Boston does light up a bit, and we know about Boston, why that is. But right there, Charleston. Anyone know what happened with Charleston in South Carolina? It's the one place, Charleston, don't get me wrong, Charleston is beautiful. I mean, I love the Carolinas. They're gorgeous. I love Outer Banks. You guys know I love it. You know what I mean? But have you ever been to Charleston? We always had a hard time working there. Like, it's extremely wealthy there. It's extremely wealthy. It has a huge shipping business. And you can tell it was not under any restrictions at all. No climate change restrictions there. Massive, massive wealth there. Same families, same wealth, same houses. Nothing changed. No ghettos. No Section 8 housing. And it was like, oh, this is just an updated version. It was as though the South had just continued to grow and update all the families, and there was no remorse there. We had traveled through a bunch of southern states, and there was always remorse. Does that make sense? Like, there was a lot of peace in interracial, how do I put it? Like, some of my favorite towns were the ones where there was like one stoplight. Have you guys ever done those towns where like you stop on through, you have to stop on through to go work through. Sometimes you can only drive, you can't do it by air. And so you end up stopping through some unusual, so you end up through one stoplight towns, or you get to eat and stuff. Sometimes best food, best barbecue I've ever had is in a one stoplight town. Best barbecue, hands down, one stoplight town. That's it. There's just one stoplight in the whole town. But Charleston, like there's just this unity and this beauty about the South that wasn't there. I mean, it's just hard to describe. So all I can say is I was not surprised by the earthquakes in Charleston. Like, we were like, ooh, not surprised. You don't see any filming in just like, nope, not surprised at all. No, not at all. Nope. Okay, so right before we're almost done here. So I wanted to talk you through why, like, this is to me the dragon's head, why this looks this way. This is the one place where all three continents, it's the only, Turkey/ancient Greece was the only continent that had all three continents combined on it. This is the only piece of land or nation where all three continents combined. This is like the, basically the European continent, this is the African continent, and then this is Asia. So it has Asia, Europe, and Africa. And so that's why it has these fault lines that you see, right? So you can see the fault lines here. They're very clear. It's not like I'm just making them up. Everywhere you go, every map that you see, these fault lines clearly appear. And this head appears with this eye right there. And then every single fault line goes down and goes, hey, we're going to go visit the King's Road. We're going to go visit Lebanon, right? So it's very, very interesting to see that. Now, what's also interesting to see is when you go ahead and look at the 7 wonders of the world, which just kind of firms it all up for you. Like, also, well, not only that, but these are the things that have been blowing up lately. Like, these are the things that have been, these 3 continents have been going nuts lately. These are the earthquakes that have been going. So not only is this the dragon head, in my opinion, but this is where all the earthquakes are going when you see it lit up. So in it, the plague, the 7th plague, it says it filled the cup of the air. It said an earthquake like there's never been. Well, yeah. And where is it happening? It's happening on this beast, and it's just going along all these fault lines. It looks like it's going to separate out these 3 continents practically. It's going all along this beast. So it's happening all along here. And then where it's also kind of confirms that this is the beast, because when you look at how UNESCO and the UN, which controls like all the world's power, look at what they do with it. This is how the richest families in the world define it. they say, hey, locations of the 7 wonders of the world, right? They say, where are the locations of the 7 wonders of the world? Well, there's the head of the beast. And where are the locations of all 7 wonders of the ancient world? And you have to ask yourself, like, what the heck? Why isn't there are a million ziggurats in China, more than any place in the world. Why are all of the wonders of the ancient world here? Why are they all right here? And I'd like to point out for you guys, the statue of Zeus is right here. Zeus, you know, the guy that Hitler worshipped, rebuilt his temple for all of his rallies. So we've got the statue of Zeus, the temple of Artemis, dun 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 dun, Artemis, you know, also known as Asherah, also known as Ashtoreth, also known as Mary. Throughout, you know, here's how you know if she's been there. If there was a bunch of women who leave and you look underneath the ground and you find a bunch of carcasses of babies, you know, dead babies. If there's a bunch of women around and dead babies are under the earth, you know, like nunneries. Go to any kind of nunnery, and there'll be a bunch of dead babies under the ground. That's how you know Artemis has been there. Wonder of the world, mausoleum, Colosseum, and then you've got the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Of course, it's not the Library of Alexandria, you would think, but no, Lighthouse of Alexandria. Pyramid, not the Pyramid of Giza, Pyramid of Khufu. Not the pyramid. That makes you think that pyramid thing about it being Enoch must be real. Since they're like, here, they're going to pick a different pyramid than the one at Giza, the most famous pyramids of the world. That's not a one. That's not the famous wonder of the world. That's not a 7 wonder of the world. And then they've got, what is it at the, what the dragon's breathing at? What is it at the very heart? What would be the heart of the dragon? It would be the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And I was like, that's it. Literally where all the predictions of the end of the world began, where Daniel gave his prediction to Nebuchadnezzar, where Daniel began, the book of Daniel began right here in the heart, right here in Babylon. I was just like, and that comes full circle. So that brings me to my point in saying all of this was to say that, you know, the earthquakes aren't going to be a big earthquake that breaks apart all of the cities of the world. I think they've been broken all apart already by COVID. And I think that it's nothing. Once we saw him say it said all the plagues, and then it said, hey, by the way, right there in chapter 15, I come like a thief. It was a signal that, hey, all the things that have come here, from here on out, it could be any time. And it has been. It's been all over the place, right? And then all I know is that we have been talking about it being Revelations 19. You know, Babylon has fallen, for sure. Beirut has fallen. We keep getting affirmations that that's actually what's happened because, you know, we just had a 7.0 earthquake exactly at the edge, like right where that earthquake ended. Lebanon at Beirut had an earthquake. It went exactly 600 miles to the, like exactly, because I remember talking with my friends and going, this is really odd. 600 miles. Where does that go? Oh, it goes down here. Oh, that's really odd. And oh, it goes up here. Oh, to some city named Isa. Have you heard of an Isa city? That's where it went. That was where the 7.0 earthquake was in the city of Isa, out in the ocean by Isa, something like that. And so when it happened, I was like, oh my God. I mean, I made such a big deal about it because I was like, I thought it would go 600 miles out to Beirut, or not to Beirut, sorry, to Istanbul. I thought it'd be like, oh, it reached all the way 600 miles and that would be Istanbul or something like that, or reached Greece and be like Athens. It reached Athens. And I was like, it didn't. It like everything's been lining up. All these amazing things with Beirut has been hitting all these big historic things. And then it goes 600 miles to Isa, whatever. were easier. I was like, anyone know what that has to do with anything? I didn't know that was Ephesus. None of us knew that. I don't know. Everyone says that America is a Christian nation. Could have fooled me. I'm still having to learn all this stuff. I'm like, everyone, we're all having to learn, like, where the heck is Ephesus? And it turns out, we just found out, by the way, oh, I didn't show you the best part is that turns out the earthquake happened. It didn't happen in the city of Iser, right? It happened at the island of Patmos, which turns out to be the same shape as Great Britain for some weird reason. That freaked me out. But there's the island of Patmos, where John, who wrote Revelations, was. So I was like, you mean to tell me that earthquake that happened at Beirut went right up to where Patmos is? Are you kidding me? And they're like, no, it just went like a little bit beyond. Yeah, a little bit beyond to the longitude where his burial is. And the temple of Artemis. You know, the temple of Asherah, where Beirut has the big statue of art. The one that I just done a whole episode on because of Beirut. So when I looked up the city, and someone was like, Patmos is right there. And I was like, really? Patmos? I was like, John is right there in Ephesus? And I typed in John in Ephesus, and it pulled up the the cathedral with her picture. That's how tours are done. Her picture, the picture of Asherah with the guy who wrote Revelations. And I was just like, this, you could have written it any better. I just was like, you gotta be joking me. I was like, didn't I just do an episode on this? And so when I went to tape today, I was just like, it's the 7th. And by the way, it turned out that the earthquake is 7 time zones away from America. And I was just like, really like, okay, 7.0 earthquake, 7 time zones away from us, which is why I think that Philadelphia is this. The earthquake happened exactly 7 time zones away and at 7 a.m. our time. So I was like, okay, now we're being pointed towards America. I was like, well, okay, now what's happening here? And what's happening here was the election. And I'm like, okay, we're in Revelations 19. All right, I said that we're in Revelations 19. This battle's happening. And like, oh, everyone's singing Alleluia up in heaven, not down here. And I was like, oh, the enemies are gathering for battle. And I was like, oh, we all thought, remember how I said America was Israel? Enemies are gathering for battle here in America. In Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was signed. And honestly, you guys, I hadn't thought about it. I was like, I better do a video on it. But if you really think about it, the Declaration of Independence, read through it. I've broken it down on Twitter. But the Declaration of Independence basically said everything Jesus of Nazareth said. The only difference was Jesus of Nazareth said it, and Pontius Pilate said, you better not say that or else you'll be murdered. And back then, Jesus of Nazareth said that's what needs to happen in order for our kingdom to come. Well, this was after that. And what the founders of our nation said was, we trust that the kingdom will come. We are trusting in that kingdom to make sure we win. Which is why I'm telling people, I'm not surprised they're in Philadelphia. I think that's why people are gathering there. But I'm also like, don't forget why this was won. Don't forget that it was a big battle then, and it was still won. But don't forget how they won it. And I'm like, they won it. All of the text, all their writing tells us that they were on their knees constantly, which is why I'm like, learn to pray. Learn to pray. So that's what I'm learning. I'm learning, like, okay, the battles with the angels, there's a third of them, 2/3 stayed, All right, pray. Pray that the angels war in heaven, that the right side wins. And that's the best we can do according to the texts. So when it's going down in Philadelphia, from what I'm seeing, from everything we've been shown, from all the 7-7s and everything, it looks like there really is, a living, higher being out there that's in constant contact in a bunch of different ways and kind of shouting and being like, here's how you do it. So I'm like, all right, I'm not stupid. I am stupid. So when I see things on Twitter, I see desperation now. I was my husband and I were going to pick up Tiberius. He got his little line cut. He really, really needed it. And there's a Trump sign and someone had sprayed red paint over it. And just looked exactly like the Confederate flag when they sprayed over it. Because they didn't just do an X, they did an X and then some dots. And I was like, you made it look exactly, believably, Confederate flag. And I wanted to take a big black marker and go right over it and be like, Trump won, because we were all there. We all watched until 2 a.m. So I don't think anyone's stressing about it. Everybody's like, well, we all saw what happened. We all know what happened. We were there in 2016. We all watched the results back then. We know who won. And now we just know it's probably going to go to the Supreme Court and we know who won. But when you get worried and they get pathetic, what it looked like to me when I saw the Trump thing, until I saw it, because I finally went outside, until I saw it in my own town, I see it on a single post outside of my vet clinic. You finally see it for what it is. It looks so pathetic. It's only what losers do, like people who are losing do. And that's what Revelations 19 says. It says they are the losing side. They gather, but they'll have nothing but lose. So I'm like, just make sure you're on the winning side. That's what I'm always telling people. I'm like, it's all right there. We better make sure we're on the winning side. So that's all. That's all the research I've got. I probably have more. I can't remember it from the pain. So I better go. I love you all so much. And I hope you're doing well. I hope you and your families are doing well. Hope you survived election day and night. For sure. Thank you to everyone who worked the polls. Thank you so much. You are the best of us. For sure. Mwah. Love you so much. Mwah. Bye now.